Well, howdy all, grab yourself a drink, it is time for some Path of Exile discussion. Today is day 16 of teaser season for the upcoming Lake of Kalandra expansion and patch 3.19. Today we're going to be covering two minor pieces of news and one major, with the major one being all of the gem changes that are coming in 3.19, including a couple of pretty significant changes to two of the new skills. So they're actually better than was originally announced, that was originally teased earlier in the expansion hype cycle. So firstly, we've got a quality of life change to stash tabs. You'll notice I'm calling it a quality of life change, not a quality of life improvement. And that's because some people don't like this, and I would really appreciate it if GGG give a way to opt out of this. I personally do like this change, but there are people who have a good reason for not liking it, and so I think they should be able to opt out of it. What this quality of life change is, though, is that there'll be this pile of gold coins icon that will indicate in your stash tab at a glance whether it is currently set to be public or not. So if you want them to be public and they're not, that'll make it much clearer to see that. And it is something that you do sometimes mistakenly list a tab, but you make a typo when you're typing in the price information and it ends up not going public. This will tell you at a glance if you've done that. So that's where it's a quality of life improvement. It's potentially a quality of life negative as well, though, in that it is just cluttering up very dense real estate up at the top of the screen in the stash tab. I personally think this is better than the status quo. I understand why some people don't. And if GGG allow those people a way to opt out of it, then that will be something that will make it better for everyone, rather than just being better for people like me that like it. So that's the first change. The second one is a new unique that's not really new at all. It is one of the faded uniques that's being removed, is being re-added in a different form. The Poised Prism is a primal arrow quiver that is very closely based on the 3.18 era unique Hiri's Demise. So this is going to provide a 1 to 2 cold damage to attacks per 10 dexterity. That's its most important line for most bow wielding characters. Also has a similar line for fire damage per strength and lightning damage per intelligence. Very important to note that where it says adds 0 to 3 lightning damage to attacks per 10 intelligence, this doesn't mean that if you've got 800 intelligence, this is going to add 0 or 80 or 160 or 240 to each attack. It is going to roll randomly every attack, with the minimum roll being 0, the maximum roll being 240, and no biasing on that. There's been a little bit of confusion about that. So this then has a few other benefits on top of that. 60 points of elemental resistances total and 23 points of elemental damage with attack skills. Let's compare that to Hiri's Demise. So Hiri's Demise gives you up to 11 life gain per hit, 10% attack speed, 30 to all attributes, and 10% increased area of effect. I think Hiri's Demise is similar but slightly better overall. I don't think there's a massive difference between the two items, but I think Hiri's Demise is slightly stronger overall. That said, it is important to say you've got to get your resistances somewhere, and getting them on a quiver that you're going to use anyway is a pretty significant benefit, but I think that this is just not quite as good as what used to be in its place. Additionally, minimum level 66 is a lot higher than minimum level 45, although these sorts of stat stacking builds don't usually start working until about level 70 or 80 anyway, so it's not that significant a change. So that's the new unique, the Poised Prism. Very much a side grade on Hiri's Demise, maybe a slight downgrade, but ultimately Hiri's Demise isn't going to exist anymore. There's now a lot of speculation that one of the other uniques that's yet to be unveiled is the Frost Furno replacement. So Frost Furno is one of the other faded items that does see a fair bit of use. So next we're going to talk about the changed gems information. I will put a link down in the description below to this post on the GGG website, because there is a lot more information in here. Most of this is rehashing things that were in the patch notes, but there are a few other changes. So for the new skill gems, there's Alchemist Mark and there is Overcharge support. These have not been changed since they were initially revealed. Overcharge support is pretty significant. Once you factor in that the skill deals 25% less damage, but then shocks as though dealing 90% of base damage, this ends up with a skill shocking as hard as it would do if it was doing 592.5% of its base damage. And that's at gem level 20. This is definitely good, and it's much better in this league than it would have been in previous leagues, and that's because Lightning Conduit and Galvanic Field look really good. Next we have Alchemist Mark. Basically, this is a 26% more multiplier to Ignite builds, and it's something that is intended to maybe empower a new type of poison build that doesn't try to stack lots of fast attacking small poisons, but instead tries to hit 1 or 2 massive poisons on enemies. Alchemist Mark will support that playstyle, but whether that playstyle has enough support in general to be viable is an open question. I don't think it does, but by all means, feel free to try and prove me wrong. So let's talk about the changes that happened to Galvanic Field and Lightning Conduit. When Galvanic Field and Lightning Conduit were originally announced, here's the stats. Galvanic Field, 43 to 821 damage and 10% more damage with hits per 5% shock effect on enemy when created. That is now being boosted to 56 to 1067 lightning damage. about a 30% increase, and field gains 15% more damage with hits per 5% shock effect on an enemy when created, up from 10%. So if you're shocking an enemy for 50%, instead of getting 200% base damage with this skill, you're now getting 250%, which is another 25% more multiplier. In short, this skill has been buffed to the moon. Basically exactly the same changes from the initial reveal on Lightning Conduit as well. These skills look really interesting now, and there's a lot of discussion as to exactly what the best thing to do with Galvanic Field is now. I think if you've got access to Forbidden Flame and Forbidden Flesh jewels, then you may want to seriously consider playing these on a Raider. If you're okay with a more glass cannon playstyle, then the Raider will provide you with a lot here. Raider is going to provide you with phasing, which is really useful in general. It's going to provide you with a lot of speed, and it's going to provide you with automatic elemental exposure for nearby enemies. But it's also going to give you the Ranger exclusive Forbidden Flame, Forbidden Flesh jewel, which tremendously boosts ailments. So this is one option you could use with Galvanic Field or with Lightning Conduit. The second option is to go with an Elementalist and again embrace the squishy lifestyle. You will need to have a lot of gear to be defensively strong on a character like this, but offensively you will have a lot going for you. The third option is taking a less glass cannon approach and going Trickster. Trickster feels like it will gain a lot for this playstyle because it has a lot of speed, and speed seems to be something that a 2-button build like this will need. I am seriously considering league starting a Trickster build that is using Overcharge linked to the newly buffed Shock Nova in the gloves. The gloves would be Thunder Fist, which then cause Socketed Gems to be supported by level 29 added lightning damage, which means that I'm then getting pretty solid damage on Shock Nova, despite the 25% less from Overcharge. Overcharge then causes it to inflict massive shocks, and then Galvanic Field comes along and mops up everything. That's something I'm considering as a league starter. I do think it'll be one of the more clunky playstyles, but I also think there's a lot of raw power there. There's also other options though, and I'm still not set on that. In terms of other changes that have been made since the patch notes, Seismic Trap is getting a damage reduction as well as the mechanical changes that are being made to it, and I do think that this kills the skill. Anyways, definitely have a look at the rest of the gems. I may put together a longer video on them, or I might do a live stream. I haven't yet decided. Otherwise, I'm going to leave it there. May your Varlorbs have interesting results, and I will see you around.